Hello to all Cinemaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The movie begins years after the end of the world. Due to the war over oil and all types of fuel, the human population has drastically decreased, and the planet has descended into chaos. People formed gangs to survive, and over time, each gang became isolated, living among themselves. People became savage, almost like animals. A cop named Max decided to live alone in the desert to avoid becoming like the rest. He faced anyone who crossed his path by himself. One day, while driving his car, he noticed a gang led by Joe chasing him. Max tried to escape, but the gang was too large and managed to flip his car. Max survived the crash, but Joe's gang captured him, shaved his head, and tattooed their gang symbol on his body. The tattoo marked Max as the property of Joe's gang, and they captured him to extract his blood. Joe, the leader of the gang and ruler of a place called City Dwell. Joe was a tyrant and dictator who controlled all the city's resources. He addresses the people, announcing that he will send out a team to retrieve fuel from Gastown and bullets from Bullet Farm, with Empress Furiosa leading the mission. He introduces the men who will join Furiosa on this mission. Joe had a large water supply in his fortress, which he had cut off from the people, but now he opens the water tanks, and the people scramble to grab as much water as they can. Moments later, Joe shuts off the water, and people start fighting each other for what little water they manage to collect. Furiosa and her team set off for Gastown and Bullet Farm, but along the way, she suddenly veers off the road, taking a different route without informing anyone. Her team has no choice but to follow her, confused by the sudden change. One of the team members asks her where they are going, but she refuses to answer. They continue following her. Meanwhile, back at Joe's fortress, someone sees Furiosa's deviation through binoculars and reports it to Joe, who is puzzled by her actions, especially since she is heading towards a rival gang. Joe begins to suspect something is wrong and checks on his wives, only to find that they are missing. It turns out that Furiosa has taken them with her. Joe becomes furious and orders all his men to chase after Furiosa to retrieve his wives. One of Joe's men, named Nux, was using Max as a blood donor, as Nux was injured. Despite this, Nux decides to join the chase, being one of Joe's most loyal men. All of Joe's men set off, and Nux ties Max to the front of his vehicle with a hose connected to Max to transfer his blood. Joe also joins the chase with his gang. Joe's gang begins launching flares into the sky to signal for reinforcements from Gastown and Bullet Farm. Furiosa's team sees the smoke in the sky and asks her what is happening, but Furiosa continues to refuse to answer any questions. On the other side, in the desert, there is a gang called the Buzzards. They spot Furiosa's team and decide to attack them. The Buzzards begin to approach, and Furiosa's team, seeing them, asks her what they should do. Furiosa tells them to drive fast and escape, and to have their weapons ready. However, one of Furiosa's vehicles falls into a trap, and the Buzzards, who are riding motorcycles, ram the remaining vehicles. They attempt to slash the tires of Furiosa's truck, but Furiosa's men throw several spears at one of the Buzzards' vehicles, destroying it. Furiosa instructs her men to get rid of another vehicle, and she manages to get herself into safety. However, Joe's team is now very close, and more Buzzard vehicles appear, leading to a large confrontation between the two gangs. Joe's team suffers heavy losses, but they push through. Nux, driving his car, manages to get close to Furiosa, but they find themselves entering a massive sandstorm. One of Furiosa's men realizes that she is betraying Joe, so he confronts Furiosa, but she knocks him off the truck. Nux gets even closer and tries to shoot Furiosa, but she rams his car with her truck, causing Nux's tires to explode. Nux then orders one of his companions to untie Max and strap him to the back of the car, but as soon as Max is freed, he manages to attack the man, throwing him off. Max attempts to get inside Nux's car, but Nux locks all the windows. They enter the sandstorm, with Max holding onto the car for dear life while Furiosa drives alongside. Nux watches as his friends die in the storm. Furiosa changes direction, heading another way, but Nux keeps his eyes on her and becomes determined to sacrifice himself to kill her. He fills his car with gasoline, and Max notices what he's doing. He breaks the car window and tries to stop the crazed Nux. As they struggle, Furiosa rams them with her truck, and Nux's car is completely destroyed. Max later wakes up, finding himself alive. He removes the hose that was drawing his blood, but realizes he's still chained to Nux. He drags Nux's body, intending to break the chains by shooting them, but the gun malfunctions. Max spots Furiosa's truck in the distance, so he drags Nux with him and heads towards it. When he arrives, he sees Furiosa, Joe's wives, and 5 others with a hose of water. Max points a gun at them, demanding water. One of the wives steps forward, handing him the hose, and Max drinks, water spilling from the truck as he does so. At that moment, Nux regains consciousness and jumps at Max. Seizing the opportunity, Max takes Nux's gun, but Furiosa comes up behind him and forces him to point it at himself. Meanwhile, Joe's wives hold Nux back. Max fights with Furiosa, eventually overpowering her and pinning her to the ground. At that moment, they all notice Joe's team approaching quickly. Nux, excited, tells Max that Joe will reward them greatly for capturing the women alive. Max, uninterested in Nux's claims, orders him to cut the chains. Once free, Max punches Nux, takes the truck, and starts driving quickly before Joe and his men can catch up. However, Max soon realizes the truck has a special code, known only to Furiosa, causing it to stop. With no other choice, Max lets Furiosa take the wheel, and Joe's wives join them, while Max keeps his gun raised, staying cautious of everyone. Furiosa reveals they are heading to the Green Place, a safe, fertile land. This place is part of a region called the George. Furiosa explains that she made a deal with the gang there to secure passage in exchange for a tank of fuel. But with Joe's gang chasing them, she instructs Max to hide and be prepared for any betrayal. Furiosa shares the code to start the truck, and they reach the George region. Furiosa steps out of the truck and loudly tells the gang that she'll leave the fuel tank in the desert. She asks the gang to roll rocks behind them to block the road after they pass. The George gang appears on motorcycles, but before Furiosa can finalize the negotiations, Joe's gang closes in. Realizing there isn't enough time, Furiosa speeds off in the truck, dodging gunfire. The George gang explodes rocks to block the path, preventing Joe's gang from entering their territory. The George gang, now furious that Furiosa brought Joe's gang to their land, chases after Furiosa's truck on motorcycles, determined to take the fuel. They throw a bomb at the front of the truck. Meanwhile, Joe, driving his massive vehicle, manages to cross the rocks and brings along his best men. Nux, having caught up to them, tells Joe that he was with Furiosa in the truck. Impressed, Joe allows Nux to join him in his vehicle. Joe orders his men to blow up the rocks after he crosses, ensuring no one else can follow. His massive vehicle successfully makes it through. On the other side, the George gang keeps jumping onto Furiosa's truck, throwing bombs, causing the fire at the front of the truck to intensify. However, Furiosa manages to come up with a solution. She lowers the truck's grill, causing a large amount of sand to blow over the truck, which extinguishes the fire. She then begins shooting at the gang, but they don't give up easily. One of them lights a stick of dynamite, intending to throw it into the driver's cabin. Furiosa quickly shoots a flare into his face, causing him to fall under the truck and die, with the dynamite exploding at the back of the truck near the fuel tank. After they deal with the George gang, Joe finally catches up with them. He aims his weapon at Furiosa, but one of Joe's wives opens the door to shield Furiosa. Taking advantage of the moment, Furiosa kills one of Joe's men. Joe then hands Nux a gun and orders him to sneak onto the truck and kill Furiosa. Nux tries to follow the order, but he trips on his chain and almost falls, causing Joe to lose hope in him. Joe speeds up, jumping over a rock, taking the lead. One of Joe's men, named Rictus, throws a spear at Max's steering wheel, trapping Max's arm painfully. One of Joe's wives, named Angharad, jumps out of the truck and cuts the chain, allowing Furiosa to take control of the steering. Suddenly, a large rock appears in front of them, and they crash into it. Angharad, who had been standing on the truck, slips, gets caught in the door, and is thrown off. Joe's car almost runs her over, but he manages to avoid her, causing his vehicle to flip over. Joe believes Angharad is still alive and begs Max to go back and save her. However, Max refuses, saying she is already dead. Furiosa insists they must keep moving toward the Green Place. Joe, holding the body of his favorite wife, cries over her death as she was pregnant. A few of Joe's men on motorcycles catch up with them, and Joe orders them to go ahead. Meanwhile, Furiosa's truck engine starts smoking due to overheating. They stop the truck so Furiosa can fix the engine. As she works, she spots Joe's men on motorcycles and begins taking them out. They continue their journey, and one of Joe's wives moves to the back of the truck to keep an eye on things. There, she finds Nux sitting, upset and frustrated. She asks him what's wrong, and he confesses that Joe will never forgive him for failing him, especially since the person who was receiving his blood is now driving the truck that carries Joe's wives. She tries to comfort him, sitting beside him and talking to him, but she promises not to tell anyone that Nux is still there. Max keeps driving the truck until nightfall when the vehicle gets stuck in the mud. It turns out they've reached a swampy area. Max and the group decide to use the situation to their advantage, setting up bombs in the mud to slow down Joe's convoy. They change the tires and continue moving. One of Joe's trucks explodes due to the bombs, and the rest of the convoy gets delayed by the mud. The leader of the bullet farm, who was with them, becomes frustrated that he hasn't had a chance to fight yet. He and his men decide to push forward on their own, as their vehicle isn't stuck because it's built like a tank. Meanwhile, Max's truck gets stuck again, and they must figure out a solution before their enemies catch up. The leader of the bullet farm approaches rapidly, so Max decides to shoot at him, firing 2 shots but missing. Furiosa takes the last shot and manages to hit the headlights of the bullet farm leader's vehicle, blinding him. Nux, eager to help, emerges from his hiding spot and suggests tying the truck to a nearby tree to pull it out of the mud. At the same time, the bullet farm leader, in his madness, begins shooting wildly, not caring if he hits Joe's wives. Joe's wives panic and flee in fear while Nux drives the truck, successfully pulling it out of the mud with the help of the tree. However, they soon face another problem. The engine begins overheating. Max decides to set a trap for the bullet farm leader while the rest of the team cools down the engine. Max moves forward alone. Explosions are heard in the darkness, and Furiosa worries whether Max survived. She prepares to shoot at the figure emerging from the dark, but it turns out to be Max, who has taken down the bullet farm leader and brought back spare parts and supplies from his vehicle. With the truck freed, they move out of the swampy area and continue through the abandoned zone filled with strange creatures and dead trees. By morning, they finally reach the green place. However, they find nothing but a woman standing atop a tower, calling for help. Max suspects it's a trap, but Furiosa steps forward and shouts that she used to live in the green place when she was a child, and that she and her mother were kidnapped long ago. Upon hearing this, the woman on the tower calls for her companions, and more women appear. They recognize Furiosa, explaining that Joe had indeed kidnapped her and her mother. Furiosa, devastated, learns that the green place has become the swamp they passed through earlier. The once fertile land is now a barren, uninhabitable wasteland, as evidenced by the dead trees they saw. Furiosa is left wondering what to do next. After thinking it over all day, she decides they should head east to find new fertile land and start fresh, building a new home there. She tells Max they will leave the truck behind and travel on foot, inviting him to join them if he wishes. Max refuses, saying he will go his own way. As Furiosa and the women set off on motorcycles, Max watches them disappear into the distance. Suddenly, Max has a dangerous idea. He rushes to catch up with Furiosa and stops her, telling them that traveling further into the desert is too risky with no guarantee of finding anything. He suggests a better plan: return to Joe's citadel, using the same path they took to get here. Max's idea is to lure Joe and his men into the swamp, where they can fight them off and take over the citadel. Although it's a risky plan, everyone agrees, and they prepare to head back with the truck. Joe and his men, who have just made it out of the swamps, they're taking a break from the chase when Joe spots Furiosa's truck heading toward the citadel. Immediately, he commands his men to move and pursue them. One of Joe's vehicles races ahead of the others, catching up to Furiosa's truck. A firefight ensues, and one of Joe's soldiers siphons fuel from the truck, which boosts the vehicle's speed. Nux attempts the same maneuver, but it's risky for the truck's engine. Furiosa, however, is determined not to let Joe's men get ahead. In the end, the engine of Furiosa's truck stalls, and the backup engine is close to overheating. As a result, their truck slows down. Max orders Nux to fix the first engine, while Max himself tries to release the fuel tank. But Joe's men are closing in, hurling spears at the back of the truck, slowing them down further. Max takes a dangerous risk to remove the spears, but Joe's vehicles are now dangerously close. The women inside the truck are in the direct line of fire and begin to shoot back. Max finally removes all the spears and returns to his seat. However, Joe's soldiers are swinging on poles, leaping onto the truck. Max fights them off, but one of Joe's soldiers throws a smoke bomb into the driver's cabin, and another wraps a rope around Furiosa's neck. One of the women rescues Furiosa by killing the soldier, but she doesn't notice another man behind her, who kills her with a chainsaw. Furiosa fights through the smoke and kills anyone who approaches the driver's seat. Meanwhile, Max continues to fend off Joe's men, but he's hit by an arrow in his arm and loses consciousness. Joe's men are overwhelming the group, and one of them captures one of Joe's wives. Max regains consciousness and returns to the fight. He's almost killed by a soldier with a chainsaw, but Furiosa saves him at the last second. Another soldier climbs onto the truck, attempting to take out Furiosa, but she manages to fight him off with great difficulty. Joe's wife also helps by getting rid of another soldier. Nux, meanwhile, manages to fix the engine and gets the truck moving again. Max leaps onto another vehicle driven by one of Joe's men and engages in a brutal fight, throwing one of the soldiers out and attacking the leader of the gas town. The leader loses consciousness, and Max seizes control of the vehicle. Joe tries to kill Max by ramming into him, but Max uses the unconscious leader as a shield. As Joe's vehicle catches fire, his wives inform Max that Furiosa has been seriously injured. Max makes a split-second decision to jump off the truck, allowing it to crash and explode into Joe's convoy. Before Max can return to Furiosa's truck, another soldier grabs him and attempts to throw him onto the road. Max barely manages to escape and leaps onto another of Joe's vehicles. Joe's car then advances in front of Furiosa's truck, trying to block their path. Furiosa, weakened from her injury, hands over control to Nux and heads toward Joe's vehicle. As Joe prepares to kill Furiosa, Max arrives just in time, knocking out Rictus, Joe's brutal son, with a blow to the head. While Max deals with Rictus, Furiosa takes on Joe. Using her metal arm, she grabs Joe's mask and hooks it to the wheels of his vehicle. As Joe's vehicle speeds forward, the mask gets caught, tearing it off his face. Without his breathing apparatus, Joe's face is crushed, and he dies instantly. With a significant part of their mission accomplished, Joe's wives, Max and Furiosa, all exit the truck, preparing to leave. But Rictus, still alive, attempts to sabotage the truck by throwing its engine onto Furiosa's vehicle. Nux, however, makes the ultimate sacrifice, driving his truck into Joe's convoy and blocking their path, allowing Max, Furiosa, and the others to escape. Despite the success, not everything is well. Furiosa is gravely wounded and losing a lot of blood. In a desperate move, Max decides to give her a blood transfusion. After a while, they reach the Citadel, and Max shows the guards Joe's body. The people of the Citadel celebrate, finally free from their tyrannical ruler. Water is released for the citizens, and they can now use it freely. Furiosa is hailed as the new wise leader of the Citadel, while Max, ever the lone wanderer, disappears into the crowd, heading off on his next journey and adventure. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button to get more new videos. See ya!